panelists, thank you. And thank you for all the attendees who are joining this one. This is something that's particularly to my heart, coming from a marketing and market research background. You know, just things that are new always pique my interest, but beyond that, it's looking at the consumer and what the consumer wants. So I'm coming here with the kind of consumer perspective and putting this together, but as we've kind of had conversations across the week on social media and direct with people, there's much more wine implications, like wine producer implications, that hopefully we'll uncover some of today as well, because not a secret, but it's just not always known. So I just want to do a little intro for any attendees who haven't been to one of our webinars before, done a Zoom webinar before. There is a chat box that you can select and view. We've already started chatting in there. Please do select all panelists if you only want the panelists to see, but it's better to get a conversation going if you select panelists and attendees so that we can all see and chat. There's also a Q&A box, because the chat box goes quite fast. If there are specific questions that you want answering, please put those in the Q&A box and I'll be checking those as we go through. Hi, BIB Wine. And so we've got the amazing panel today, more than we've had before. So we've got Amelia, as always. Hi, Amelia. Thanks for joining. Presenter from the Wine Show. Had someone say to me the other day that I hadn't introduced you and they didn't know who you were, and looked you up afterwards. So yeah.
Oh, that was last week. Yeah.
Who are you? So, she also runs
an existential crisis at this point in COVID. Yeah.
Yeah, she runs Amelia's Wine and does wine courses as well. So if you're interested in learning more, check that out. She's over in LA at the moment. Then we've got Robert Joseph, who I'm a huge fan of, have been for a long time, and you know, as well as being a you know, wine writer, wine producer, so we've got Greener Planet, Le Grand Noir and Georgian wines as well. If you want to find out more about those, Robert's got he's got a 67 Pall Mall session, haven't you, with your Georgian wines? And then Le Grand Noir, yes. Is the wine show at home? Has that been?
It's wine show at home. It's coming up, and it's actually on the 11th of July at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So only very sad British people will have nothing better to do at that time. It's when my football team will be losing. It'll be half an hour through a 90-minute match. So I'll be very happy to leave that match and come and do some Georgian wines rather than see the goals coming into my team's net. But anybody else can watch it on video afterwards.
Yeah, so catch those. You know, and Robert's kind of done consulting with wine companies like Torres and wine regions like Georgia. He knows so much, but the thing that attracted me to his fan base is his kind of disruption of the industry, or getting people to think about it as such a traditional place. And Robert's very focused on, you know, why do we do this, and do we have to do it that way? Are there other ways? So that's, you know, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Then we've also got Rob and Anthony from Wine in Rome. Hello. We've got Ben and Simon from the Canned Wine Company. Then we've got Natalia from Stanlake Park. We've got Kristen from Nomadica over in LA as well. And then we have the wonderful James in his Nania's Vineyard, and you're actually there right now, so it's good to see you there. Yeah, and then we've also got some amazing people that I'd have loved to have on the panel, but as you can see from the gallery view, there's not really room to add them on, so we'll kind of switch people in and out later. We've also got Anne Victoire from Miss Vicky Wine, who's got some cans and bag-in-box.
From Beaujolais.
From Beaujolais. We have Vicky from the Little Fine Wine Company, so she can talk to us a little bit about half bottles. And then we've got Ollie from BIB Wine, bag-in-box wine. So yeah, it's great to have all of you here. So first up, I want to pass over to Robert to kind of talk a little bit about the tradition of the 750ml bottle. Why do we have it, and do we need it?
just before we get any further, can we just, I need a lead on what's the language rules? What words am I allowed to say? So basically, am I allowed to say the wine industry is shit?
Yeah.
Good. Basically, we're not an industry. We don't like being called an industry. We're not an industry. We are the least innovative. Jamie Good will hate most of this. We are the least innovative industry in the world. And so basically, we have these 750 ml, every single bottle, including the Stanlake may be a big one behind you, but normally everything in a supermarket is 750 ml because that is the lung capacity of a 17th century French glass blower. And there are basically three shapes of bottle. There's the ones with the shoulders, the ones with no shoulders, and the tall ones. And we've got slightly bigger ones, the heavier ones for sparkling wine, and that's it. And until very recently, we put bits of wood in the top of them. And we put bits of wood in the top of them because we've been doing that for 200 or 300 years. And we thought, okay, let's evolve. How are we going to evolve beyond that? I know what we'll do. We've got a problem with a little bit of wood we put in the top. We'll replace it with, a Coca-Cola closure, a screw cap. And suddenly this is brilliant because on the one hand, we had all the fascists who were corks, only corks, only corks. And then we now got screw cap fascists. They're usually Australian or New Zealanders. And anything that isn't a screw cap is wrong. I don't love screw caps. I hate corks. DMs, they're good. They're great. What are they? They're bits of cork stuck together to make something look like a cork. So essentially, it's a replacement cork that you still need a bloody thing to get out. And then we've got bits of cork with little bits of cork stuck together with rings at the top. They're called twin tops or 2+2s. You've probably noticed when you pull them out of a bottle, and essentially there's a disc and a bit of agglomerate cork, another disc. If ever you see a bottle of wine with those, do not buy that wine. They are appalling because what happens is you've got the good cork at the top and the bottom, the agglomerate bottle in the middle, and the wine gets past the discs and it touches the agglomerate and it spoils the flavor. So you've got corks which are unreliable, and they're unreliable to the extent of probably 1% to 2%, which isn't much. I mean, 1%, 1% condom failure, we wouldn't worry about that, would we? 1% of car tire failure, brakes, we wouldn't worry about that. It's part of the romance of driving, part of the romance of, right? I don't need to go there. So that's corks. Then we have DM, then we have Noma cork, synthetic corks. I think they're brilliant. They really are good. You can control how much oxygen goes in and out, and you can do that. I really like them. And in fact, the plant-based ones are actually environmentally nice, except you can't really recycle them because there's nowhere to send them to be recycled. But they're good, except that they're a fake cork. They are a plastic cork. And when I'm buying my $100 wine, do I really want a plastic copy of a cork in the top? When I buy my $50,000 car, do I want plastic wood? Do I want synthetic leather? So no. So we're seeing DM in top-end Chablis and white Burgundies and so on because of the level of oxidation of those. And we do see Noma cork in some higher grade wines, but not that many. So what else have we got? We've got the glass stopper, the Vino Lock. They're lovely. They're beautiful. Henschke uses them in Australia. They're used by Cusumano in Sicily. And if you go on their website, you'll find various other people you've never heard of who actually use them. And they're delightful. They're lovely. But there's some unreliability on the bottles, and they've never been embraced. They're elegant. You can put the name of the winery on them. You can put them back in the bottle. They're beautiful. Everything about them is lovely, except they've never been adopted. What else have we got? Oh, well, we've got cans. I think cans are brilliant. I think cans are the best thing to happen to wine in a long time. They're what we get Coca-Cola and beer out of. So we as a wine industry have been really clever. We've gone to the beer can manufacturers and said, let's adapt the things that you put lager in and we'll put wine in. And hey, aren't we being innovative? No, we're not being innovative. We're just taking a form of packaging that exists on the market. And we're actually, the only two bits of real innovation that we've seen in wine, to be honest, is the bag-in-box, which was invented for battery acid originally, which was, it was picked up in Australia because originally it was a way of moving around battery acid, and Angove adopted them in Australia, and they were really created for wine and aren't really used for much else. And the Vino Lock. We've also got the pouch, but nobody really wants those. Those are awful. They're used for milk and cream in some places. But the wine industry needs to do something else. I think cans are wonderful, except, do you drink wine from the can, anyone? I actually tried the Montepulciano from the can earlier. Sorry, the Touriga Nacional. It's 13% alcohol. It's not ideal from a can. The 11%, 11.5% you can kind of do, but directing from a can to be honest, 5.5% kind of works. But we're not making 5.5% wine. We are making 5.5%. Oh, James, you're making a 5.5% wine-based cocktail, which works, and I think that actually does work in a can because it's competing with all those other things in cans that are 5.5% alcohol or below. What we need, I think, is and people have invented these things, is something that is a container for 250 ml, which also involves the drinking receptacle that is recyclable and that works. And people have done it. We've had something, Marks and Spencer had something called the froglet, which was quite a neat thing, but the industry has never really adopted things that are new. The industry doesn't like cans, which brings me back to it. And we get people like Alice Firing, with whom I have a very good relationship. I love her as a person. I disagree with her so fundamentally on natural wine, it's not true. But we get on otherwise. But she says, wine in cans is wrong. R-O-N-G, wrong. No, she spells it right. But the point about this is what God, what Greek, Roman, or Norse God is there to say that wine should come in a glass bottle? Because the traditional way of drinking wine was from a sheep's stomach. You think about what those Spaniards were drinking it from in the fields. They were drinking liters of wine from a sheep's innards, made up to actually be a container. Wine has been drunk from all sorts of different containers. There's no reason why we shouldn't drink it from cans if we want to drink from cans, even though I'm not saying it's ideal. I think the wine industry needs to spend some of its money on actually creating a closure that is better than the Vino Lock, the cork, the Diam, the Noma cork, that works for super premium wine, the sort of wines that you see in your stores in the States, Amelia and Christian, but we don't see as much here, but really smart bottles of wine that are not going to use DM or Noma cork. And we need other forms of environmentally friendly packaging like the can, but which actually we can use to drink from, as well as serve as the container. So that's my little rant to start.
I think that's definitely a great introduction, and kind of where we're coming from in terms of where is the market for these things? Why are there not more of them? Is it is the industry holding back on it? Is because people don't want it? Is it a combination of both?
I think the point to be said is that the industry is always, and France is worse. I mean, I'm talking to Anne Victoire, can probably chip in here. But in France, there was a time where French people wanted to drink varietal wines, and the French supermarkets wouldn't give it to them. And I think there's plenty of evidence today that French people want to drink. Their bag-in-box has taken off hugely in France in recent years, but it took a long time. And I think lots of French people would love to have, young French people would love to have wine in cans, but actually getting it onto the shelves isn't easy. I think it'd be quite interesting to hear from Anne Victoire, who is muted.
Mm-hmm.
You can unmute her, I can't.
I'm trying.
So I've known Anne Victoire for quite a few years. Can we hear? Maybe can't. Anyway, Anne Victoire oh, here we go.
Oh.
Salut. Can you tell us about selling cans in France?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
No, we can't. She's muted still.
Oh, muted again.
She's gone. No.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. I wasn't prepared. I didn't.
So I'm saying that French supermarkets are not as ready to embrace cans of wine as.
No, I'm trying. I've been talking to them because I organized a conference a few months ago in Paris about the wine in can, where David Kermode came to speak about his perspective on the can and his experience. And anyway, I'm calling the buyers from supermarket. I'm having conversation with them. They are interested, but they say it's too expensive to test. We are not ready. They are not ready. Maybe one day it works abroad, but it won't work here. They are not totally fully convinced, I think something is missing in their connection. I think they don't believe in it yet.
But can I say that California, I see lots of cans, Kristen,
Yes.
but when I was in New Jersey, the end of last year, I didn't. I saw lots of hard seltzer in cans. I saw lots of other things. I went around, I must have done about 20 or 30 stores, and I didn't see nearly as many wine cans as I expected.
Yes.
Kristen?
Yes. We're actually distributed in New Jersey as well, but it hasn't really taken off. How do I say this politely? But you're British, so you'll all be okay with it. In like the less savvy markets, we've had a really easy time selling in places like San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, even Austin, Texas, but Miami, but New Jersey, Oklahoma. It's just consumer perception.
So Chris and I also were talking about the parallels too between London and New York and commuters being like kind of a key part of the demographic who buy into it. So I'm guessing, like, I don't know what the commuting situation is like in those other states you just mentioned.
Definitely more cars. Yes, totally. Yeah. So.
Yeah, but I think they're buying everything else in cans.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that's an absolute thing. I think that it's not sophisticated. So I'm nervous about it. And also the stores that I was going to, and I was going to some pretty middle grade stores whose managers didn't really know much about wine. Nobody is going to tell the customer that it's all right. The other thing, though, that I'd say, and I'm interested to hear from you, in the States, I don't know how much your cans retail for, but people have been paying quite a significant retail price for cans. If I work out how much I'm paying per liter or per bottle equivalent, the cans are pretty pricey, a lot of them.
That has not necessarily been my experience. Our cans are one of the more premium options on the market. And I continually run into this problem where buyers expect them to be cheaper.
Mm-hmm. How much are your cans?
They are $4 wholesale individually. So
and how big are they?
They're 250 milliliters. So that would be the equivalent of a $12 bottle wholesale.
That's wholesale. So $12 wholesale. So retail, they're going to be how much?
They're about $6 at retail or $21.99 for a 4-pack, which is how we like to sell them. For a liter of wine.
Which I like, but I think certainly in the UK, I think we would see that equivalent. I'd be interested to hear what any of the other Brits on the panel would feel, but I think that would be a big ask, as we would say here.
Yeah, I mean, I think with cans, the way that I see it as a can buyer is it's for the convenience and not having that kind of wastage in the bottle. So for me, I get it, but I also do get that lots of people expect it to be the same equivalent. Same with Magnum, same with half bottles. People expect it to be the same equivalent and not realizing that there is a premium added. Ben, Simon, James, have you got any weigh in on that?
I would definitely agree with you, Soma, that it's convenience, and also we're Simon and I, we're pitching in a similar place, the premium end of the market, where our cans are $5.99 a can, and aiming to change the perceptions around cans. Because if you look at the can wine market in the UK now, there's a lot of pretty poor juice being canned and sold cheaply, that's putting a whole swathe of drinkers off canned wine as a format. And we want to cater for people who are looking to drink less but drink better, and not for the people who are just looking for, I don't know, an alternative to cheap wine.
Can I ask you, Ben, where are you aiming to sell them? Through supermarkets or through specialists?
No, so we'd love a supermarket listing eventually, but I think there's a learning curve and a cultural change piece there before you actually get the supermarket listing. So we start off by selling into specialists and delis and people who are maybe slightly more curious. I mean, the young people now, they're buying at a higher price, but they're not buying the same volume. So there's a good market opportunity there. There's the commuter trade, there's the festival trade, which is normally, if it wasn't 2020, a huge opportunity for cans.
I get that.
So there's definitely an education piece before you start getting people buying £6 cans in a supermarket. But that is the longer term aim, is to start positioning there and changing attitudes around wine and can.
Did you raise your hand down, Victoire? Did you want to say
Yes,
something?
I wanted to say one thing I've noticed, that that's one of the problems with cans, is people ask, the first question is it good? Because there is this idea that can will give a bad taste to the wine, and I think there is a real education. That's why I think my first market should be wine shops, because people need to be advised to buy the can from someone they trust. If it's in the supermarket, they might not be confident, but if it's in their own, the wine shop they always go to, they might try, but they will have to discuss with the shop owner first. That's one thing. And the second thing is there is not enough offer, and the wine in can are not, most of them are not terroir wines, or, you know, there is no quality. There is a fun discourse, like a fun story, but there is no quality story. And if you only put the fun in wine in a can, you will have a hard time making the professional agree. And if they don't agree, they will not sell it. So then it will end up in cheap places. It's what I think in France. I mean, people are quite snob, you know, even very cool, trendy people, they can be very, very snob when it comes to wine. So
I think, sorry. Go.
Yeah, so that's what I think, but...
I may be out on a limb here, and James, you're doing something different in a can in terms of making a wine-based cocktail. But to me, one of the things about supermarket is that most people, when they go into a supermarket, are buying their soap powder and their dog food and everything else, and they've got whatever it is, £100, or there's a figure that they spend every week in the supermarket. And over the next, certainly, year or so, there's probably there's going to have less in their pocket maybe than they had last year. And you start putting 3 or 4 cans at £6, suddenly that's £24 potentially of your total £120 spend. That's a significant part of the whole. I disagree, and Victoire, personally, I think, because I go to the bulk wine fair every year, there is some really delicious Vin de France, and some really delicious Italian basic wine that you can buy from southern Italy that I think, and light white that we could put in with a little bit of spritz, that we could actually have cans out there for lower prices. But your point is, I think, a very good one, which is that the consumer, if the consumer isn't ready to buy it, it doesn't really matter if it's at £3 or £6. If it's just going to sit on the shelf and the person is nervous of wine in a can, we won't have solved the problem. And you may be right. And in America, what Coppola did was to start with a premium packaged, premium product from the beginning, and indeed your Pinot Noir from Oregon, Underwood. They came through as premium products to start with. So maybe that is the way to go. And maybe, Ben, you're absolutely right with your beautifully packaged Brunner and Touriga.
I think like Ben and Simon did a tasting like a can only tasting recently, and they did convert people because people were expecting it to be poor quality. And I've had friends, you know, and I say, oh yeah, I've got this wine in can, and they're like, oh no, it's, you know, I tried one of those, and they've been like grouped into this whole block of, you know, they're all the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're spending £2 on a can, think about what quality juice is going in there. Can I just ask, because we've got Francesca who's saying that the cheaper ones aren't great wines, so you should pay a bit more for the convenience, which is kind of my view as well. There are some people here who've got the cans in front of them. Ben, would you mind giving a few tasting notes on those, on the Gruner?
Are you talking to me?
Ben.
On the Gruner, yeah, of course. So the Gruner is from Lake Narsdale, so we went for a spicier character Gruner. We wanted something that kind of showcased Gruner Veltliner in a really good way. We've actually changed producer for the second batch to Marcus Huber, who's a fantastic Gruner Veltliner producer. But both times we've opted for a slightly spicier style, because for me and for Simon and for the people we've spoken to, that is the main selling point of Gruner Veltliner, is that lovely peppery finish. But at the same time, on the reflection, we wanted to can something that was an alternative to Sauvignon Blanc, because Sauvignon doesn't really work in a can with the liners and things like that.
Because of the high acidity, right?
Simon knows a bit more about this, so I'll let him talk about why Sauvignon doesn't work in a can. But the Gruner, just to go back to it, instead of going for a warm, peachy Gruner from southern Burgenland, we wanted something a bit cooler, still with good acidity and a nice bit of kind of apple fruit in there as well, so that you have all that lovely spice character, but you also have quite a fresh style that a Sauvignon Blanc fan, which there's loads of in the UK now, could make the leap to Gruner Veltliner and not be disappointed by it. That was very important. But Simon knows why Sauvignon doesn't work in a can.
Yeah, what are the more technical issues, Simon, that you've had to deal with cans?
How technical do you want to go?
Well, like the liners, because I read that the liners don't work with the high acidity or something, or you need a thicker liner or something.
I mean, acidity is one thing. There's lots of different things in terms of the organic chemistry of wine that affects the quality. And it's really about the longevity of the wine in the can. So Sauvignon Blanc is quite specific. It has a compound called phylls in it, which reacts with the liners, and it results in quite a high failure rate, something like 1 in 9. So if 1 in every 9 car journeys, to use Robert's analogy, was going to end in disaster, then you probably wouldn't get in the car. But it happens to be probably I think the most popular grape that's going into can in the UK at the moment. I'm not sure about the US. But it's certainly not as simple as just picking a wine that you like and putting it into the can, as I think we thought when we set out on this journey.
And sulfur levels are an issue, aren't they?
Yeah, sulfur levels are key, partly because sulfur actually has a kind of metallic flavor. And so because people are expecting that kind of metallic flavor when they're drinking from a can, if the sulfur levels are too high, that will come across and it will reflect in the can, and people will blame the can as opposed to blame the levels of sulfur.
And you get reduction characters as well, don't you?
And reductive character, yeah.
So. And in regards to the lining, isn't it true that, I'm not sure if it's been completely banned, but isn't there something like BPA in the lining which can be quite harmful, or it's just not advised to have when making wine in a can?
I think there's a number of different liners depending on which manufacturer you go with. That
liner is banned in France, and that's why I know quite a lot of people, when they make their rosé, that's why they choose the kind of canning facilities in France. But I was just wondering if people were worried from a health perspective about any properties of the can. Is there anything they should be concerned about?
Not as far as I know. I mean, you drink beer, Coca-Cola, everything else out of a can. The only difference with wine, as Robert kind of said, is that the alcohol is higher relative to what else you keep in can, and acidity is quite high.
The acidity of Coca-Cola is huge.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but that, that's a very clear point. Talking about, we've been focusing on cans. I think that Rob, we've not talked about bag in box, and I feel that we should. And then I'd like to go back to what I said at the beginning about how shit this industry is. because the Australians are clever. Well, they were clever. They're now less clever than they used to be, because they came up with a country that didn't drink wine. And I remember when I went there in the 80s, I asked a journalist how Australia had gone from being a beer drinking country to a wine drinking country. And this Australian journalist said, oh, that's easy. It's when Australian men discovered Australian women. And I didn't quite get this initially, but apparently what it was when the Australians began to do their trips around Europe in their old combi vans, and they basically, students, male and female, effectively living together for weeks, months at a time, they discovered A, that wine was cheaper in Europe, but B, that the girls liked wine. And suddenly these men discovered wine along with the women and took that home, and the Barbie suddenly got to be a place where wine was. But if you go out to Australia again in the 80s, there were literally bars in which there were men only rooms in pubs and women only rooms in pubs. I've been in one of those. I was in one of those pubs. But what they did when they started to bring in wine in a bag in a box with a tap on the side, this was technically called a bag in box, because that is what it was. It was a bag in a box. And these Australians, who you don't necessarily associate with sophistication, sorry to any Australians watching, but actually realized that this was not a marketing plus. So they said, right, well, what will we call them? We'll call them a cask, because wines come in casks. And so from the beginning, the Australians said, why don't you buy your wine in cask? And they put good wine in these casks. And it really took off, and it got to be 50, 55, 57% of the market, I think, in Australia at one point. I think New Zealand followed, and so on. And then we actually put absolute crap in our bag-in-box in the UK. And when I went to Australia for the first time in 85, I went to the Orlando winery, and I said and I tasted, Orlando belonged to a company called Reckitt and Coleman, who made soap powder in those days. Coleman's mustard, and they made the most appalling, undrinkable liquid in bag-in-box in the UK. And I met the boss, Robin Day of Orlando, and I tasted his bag-in-box. It was delicious. And I said, so look, why is it so bad in the UK? And why is it so good here? And you send wine over there. Why don't they just send some people over here and see how you do it? And he said, I did. And I said, what do you mean? He said, oh, they came over for 2 weeks, watched everything we did. And I said, well, why didn't it work? And he said, oh, it's easy. They come over and treat you like ignorant colonials, you behave like ignorant colonials. So I don't know what they learned, but they went home. But we've never had, until relatively recently, and I'd be interested to hear from you, Rob, on this, but we haven't had very much really nice wine in bag-in-box. And we've called it bag-in-box, which is everything that the wretched wine industry, oh, we have vineyards, we have barrels, we have cellars, and so on. Oh, here's your wine. Have it in a bag-in-box. It's crazy. The French, at least, came up with the idea of BIB. So BIB, which doesn't mean anything you put around a baby's neck in France. BIB sounds quite friendly, and it's fine, and it goes with all sorts. And it's a kind of nice word in France. But for as long as we call it a bag-in-box, I think we've never. So in my lifetime in wine, bag-in-box has always been 10% in the UK market. It's never really taken off. It's taken off in the Nordics. In Sweden, it's over 50%. I think Norway's similar, and so on. And it really works. And they put decent wine in, and it works. The other thing, and again, I'm throwing the ball to you, Rob, in a second, is the size of the box. Because boxes in the UK have always been 3 litres, which is an inconvenient size if it's white. It does not fit in the average British fridge unless you take half the rest of the stuff out of the fridge. So you leave the chicken out to have the white wine in, which is illogical. The Australians in the 80s had 2-litre boxes, and they were nice. They were just nice things to look at, to hold. They were attractive. So yours is 2.25, I think. Is that right?
It is. And I mean, that was purely a product of market research, right? We looked at the UK market in the part of the market wanted to be in. There was some 2.25 already, so we followed the market on that. But I mean, you're right about you're saying that I think the wine industry is one of the least innovative industries in the world, and yeah, I see your point. I mean, our central innovation is to put nice wine in a box. I mean, we would say that there's more strings to our bow than that. But that's the main thing that we've done. And the reason, you know, I mean, I've come to the wine industry from completely outside the industry. I just, like you said, I just like wine. You know, I lived in Italy for a long time, and I happened to meet two guys in Milan that were putting good wine in boxes and selling it in Milan. And yeah, we basically just took their range and transplanted it into the UK, polished the branding because Italians, you know, not strong on branding generally, and that's where we started. Well, yeah, we started on Bath Farmers Market, to be honest. Ben wrote the first ever article about when in Rome, that was 3 years ago.
I still have to say you completely changed my mind immediately when I tried your wines whenever it was 4.5 years ago.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. They completely changed my mind about bag and box immediately, and it was because you were actually boxing quality wine rather than. They were the same thing with cans. You put quality first. So
if you're in France, where again back in the day, you'd go, if you lived in France, you'd go to the local cooperative with your what they call a bonbon, a big flagon, and you take it up, and they just open the tap and they fill the flagon, and you fill this 2 litre, 3 litre thing, and then you take it home. You'd either bottle it or you'd glug it all that afternoon if you were an average Frenchman, and it worked. And then those same cooperatives now are selling bag and box, and I bought bag and box Bourgogne Blanc from the Chablis cooperative, for example, that was delicious. And, you know, most French big wineries will sell you now bag and box perfectly decent wine, and some of it will be at a Vin de France level and some of it will be at an AOC level, but there's absolutely no reason why bag and box wine should be any different in quality to the wine that's in a bottle. And that's what the Swedes, you know, the average Swede on a Wednesday night is drinking very decent wine out of a bag and box.
One thing that I've been delighted by doing research for this is you've got your Wine in Rome one, which is around £25-26 for equivalent 3 bottles. Then you've got the BIB Wine one, which is around what, 33-35 for a box for 3 bottles. So again, a step up. And then you've got the De Grappin magnums. And they're, you know, they're around 30 for 2 bottles. So, you know, there's already that tiering, which I was really pleased to see.
I'd like a quick shout out to Ollie, who's here from BIB, and my friend Justin Howard-Sneed, who's also behind BIB. Really nice, the idea of a Pinot Noir from Germany with the name of the producer on there, and a rosé from Pays Catalan. Nice, very, very smartly packaged. It's the sort of thing, to me, it fits into the Hotel Chocolat style, you know, very sort of stylish packaging. And actually, whether I'd take it to a dinner party, I don't know, but it's certainly smarter than many bottles. So are the magnums recyclable? Is the question come through from Alan Crompton.
It's got a little recycle thing on it.
No, that means recycled in some places. My experience of the bag and box, and indeed most other things, unfortunately, this is why cans are so good. They are infinitely recyclable. I mean, I think 70 or 80% of the aluminium in the world has been used before, apparently. And everyone says, yes, but bauxite mines are horrible places. But somebody's told me today that actually the sand, the way we get the sand for glass, isn't necessarily that nice either. So, and the amount of energy that goes into recycling glass bottles is huge. So they're good. But I think that the problem is that although there are I'm going to ask you on this, Rob, about recyclability of your bags. How recyclable do you think those are?
Not 100%. Obviously, the cardboard outer is, and this is like we've occasionally been accused of selling muesli because of the box, because of the brown finish. But it's very easily recyclable as sort of non-toxic ink.
It's the bag inside I'm asking.
Bag inside, the clear film, which is inside, the bladder, for want of a better word, that's clear film, and that's recyclable.
In all, is that, sorry to interrupt, but my understanding is that some places, some local councils do and some don't. Is that correct, or do they?
That's correct. That's correct. It's curbside recyclable in, I think, something like 60% UK local authorities, and for the rest, you can take it into supermarkets. Waitrose in particular have a collection point where they will take it in your.
And the tap isn't yet, is that right?
The tap is not recyclable, no. And we're actually, and our taps will turn white very shortly, actually. But they're not. They still won't be recyclable. They'll just be much more easily recyclable, separated from the clear film. So.
I think the other thing, though, to be said is that the savings in terms of both in cans and bag in box is so significant in terms of the environmental impact of moving bottles that the downside of the non-recyclability of the bags is offset to an extent by that.
Well, I had this very discussion with Ollie actually last week. Because obviously the stats that we use the Finnish the Finnish alcohol monopoly for the carbon footprint, basically. Because we figured if we did our own life cycle analysis, one, it costs thousands, and two, people would think we fiddled numbers to come out in when it runs favour, right? So there's no point in doing our own stuff. We use Finnish alcohol monopoly, and the overall kind of carbon footprint of a box per litre is about 10 times less than a glass bottle. Heavy glass, traditional glass. But it isn't fully recyclable, and that does concern some people.
I think as well we need to consider the chicken and egg problem that you have with plastic in it, which is if you're not putting that kind of plastic out into an ecosystem to try and turbocharge the recycling industry to want to recycle it, you'll never get the technology to recycle it. So, yes, there is limited resource at the moment in terms of the total amount of recycling centres around the UK that can do it, but the technology does exist. So hopefully if you create the demand, because of course these recycling centres are making money when they are recycling the product themselves, they're then able to sell those raw materials on. If we're not putting any product out there for them to build an industry around, sounds like a horrible thing to say, but you've kind of got to put the product out there first to engender the recycling agencies to create the industry themselves.
Again, the Nordics, I think, are much better at this because they do have more of it.
Absolutely.
Jane, we haven't really talked, well, I haven't talked to Natalia about her rosé, and we haven't talked to Kristin or James very much.
Yeah, I want to talk to Kristin to get more of a, and I know it's going back to cans again, but kind of Alan made the comment or the question of like, when have we all first encountered wines, and specifically for you, Kristin, and Amelia over in the States, well, specifically you, Kristin, if it's such a big thing over there, was it quite an early introduction, or how has kind of how has the can industry evolved in the States?
I mean, when I first met my business partner, because my background is as a fine dining sommelier in Michelin restaurants over the last decade, and I have an Australian business partner who had the idea to do wine in a can, and this was 4 years ago when there was really only Underwood on the market. And my reaction was, no, absolutely not. That's disgusting. How dare you? I'm so offended. And I think I'm still up against that perception today, unfortunately. I do think finally there are some premium options. Like, I'm really happy to have some great vineyards in California putting wine in can to sell alongside my wine, but I'd say 75% of the market is bulk juice with a ton of sulfur in it. So it's an uphill battle over here still.
And how? Sorry.
It was kind of goes back to actually Anne Victoire's point on positioning. How do you sell it? Because definitely what strikes me, particularly in California, it's the wall of cans and like things called like the porch pounder. And, you know, and then you're like, well, do I want my can to be situated in this kind of setup? And then in England, I remember talking to Stephen Cronk from Mirabeau when he first made his rosé, and he said what a big issue was, like the opposite problem in the UK, because he's like, where do I put my rosé? Do I put it next to cans? Do I put it against the rosé? I want people to know it's a premium product. And kind of England is, I remember once talking about a food and wine book, and they didn't know what to put in the wine section of bookstore or food. I mean, you know, England is kind of funny about that. So yeah, the positioning and the marketing, I think is key. And yeah, Kristen, I can see, like, if you have your beautiful products, would you want it next to a porch pounder?
No, and that's why we went after hotels and independents first. So we've had deals with, I think, the Hoxton and the Rosewood are also in the UK, and the W Hotel, where they're national in-room wine in all hotels in the US and about to launch in Canada. And just being in those settings has given us such an advantage because people just assume that it's quality if it's there.
So I'm going to raise a question because I've got, as Soma said at the beginning, I have two key wine brands, one main brand called Le Grand Noir, which is pretty well sold in America, a small sustainable organic brand called Greener Planet, which has, it's gone up and down. It's about 20,000 cases of bottles equivalent. But we're looking at putting those into cans or doing can versions. And I've got another brand called Vive la Révolution, which I think could work well in the can. The big question is whether you should put a wine that's in a bottle also in a can, or whether you should actually have a separate line. My instinct is that I don't want to see the same wine, exactly the same wine in a can as in the bottle. And the price aspect is one of those. But you could use the same brand for a different blend or a different extension of the wine. And that, to your point, Amelia, if I see a brand I know alongside Porch Pounder and so on, am I going to feel, if the Barefoot can, do I feel happy about that because I recognize Barefoot, for example?
Can I? Yes.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you're wrong, Robert. I think that the big brands should put their wines because they've already got brand recognition, and that's what's going to help the consumer, to the acceptance from the consumer. Because, you know, if you imagine like a big brand like a Casillero del Diablo or something like that, if you had that on the shelf in a can at a third of the price of the bottle, people get it. They're like, oh, okay, that's that wine, and it's in a can. It's the same price. They can do the maths. I don't see why they wouldn't do that. But I think the most successful companies are going to be the ones who are just can only. I mean, everyone's trying to get into it because, like, oh, we need to do cans, but I think actually it's the brands who are going to just be like, we're just doing cans, which is certainly my plan for wine anyway. I don't know, that's just my feeling. And just going on something that someone else was saying about positioning it, I think wine in cans, people shouldn't be looking at it to sell to the people who are drinking wine. They should be looking at it selling to people who don't drink wine. That's the big opportunity. It's the younger people who are much more like willing to accept these kind of trends. And, you know, we should be selling to them because they're not buying wine. And that's where the opportunity is. You know, obviously it's nice to be able to sell into the wine industry with everyone else, but I do think the opportunity is people who aren't really drinking wine at the moment.
I actually agree with you in spades. And the piece that was published this week, the blog piece, which was a very nice piece, talking about how wine consumption in the US and in the UK is going down, especially amongst young people. However, your Gruner and your Touriga seem to me to be products that are targeted at wine. They're quite winey wines, and they're styles of wine that are going to be recognized by wine people. And I think that's also true of Ollie, your BIB wine. Okay, you're in a bag and box. Where your product, James, is very much, it's a very fun packaging, and it's a 5.5% beverage, really, isn't it? Because it's got raspberry juice in it. So I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, can I just share something? A kind of admission, really. I did want to go with straight up, like full strength wine originally. That was my original plan. But I always wanted to do English wine, and English grapes are so bloody expensive that I was just like, well, this isn't going to work very well, or it was going to be a much harder sell. So then I kind of decided to do some spritzers, but I do definitely want to do full strength wine in years ahead. But yeah, it was really just a practical thing. I was like, well, this is going to be easy to sell. I mean, the recommended retail price is £4 a can, and I think English wine would be at least £6 a can, if not more. You know.
Yeah. I love what you're doing, James, and you know, we talked, what was that, over a year ago about what you're doing, and I've been following you since, because I just think it's you're fun. You know, you're not taking the industry too seriously, and you changed what you were doing according to, you know, logistics and practicalities, and you know, and consumer research as well. So I think it's great.
I haven't done any consumer research. I'm just winging it. But yeah.
Well, you've had qualitative.
How to do consumer research.
You've asked people. You've been asking people.
I have been asking people.
Not proper research, but like I discovered this Mari by Jan Matthias Klein in Germany many years ago, and you know, it's not. He sold it in the UK. It's Riesling, Mate tea, and elderflower. And it's really nice. You can't, like, he did have it in the UK, but you know, no one bought it, so he didn't continue selling it in the UK. And this has found a place in my fridge and in my heart, as in, you know, we still drink.
So that's a kind of is a spritzer kind of thing as well, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I remember when that.
So those two things both fit in that same kind of consumption occasion for me.
But I think that's a product that will be great in a can. Actually, it's because it separates it from the wine category. And Victoria, you wanted to say something, though, I think.
Yes, I wanted to say. So my wine is not in a can yet. I'm doing a crowdfunding because I want to get the consumer to know about it before I have all the cans in my warehouse. But also, I'm having this wine in a bottle. It's a new wine I'm making, very fruity, light. It's a fleury, it's a Cru du Beaujolais, but I also have it in the bottle, so people can actually buy 3 cans and a bottle, and realize that 3 cans means a bottle, and that it's not the packaging who makes the wine, it's the wine that talks. And then if you go for a picnic, you'll pick the small one, and if you want to try the wine, you'll buy the can. If you like the can, you'll buy the bottle, and maybe you'll buy the magnum. And maybe if one day it's in a bag-in-box, you'll buy the bag-in-box. You trust the product, and you trust the content, the packaging, or le contenant, n'est-ce pas?
Le contenant.
And then you decide which one fits your needs, you know, which packaging. And that was my bet when I started. But first you have to trust the can to do that, and I have not made my wine in a can yet, so it's a real bet. But I think can should not be on the side like for lower end product, and then a bottle for your better product. You should maybe try every possibility if you like the wine.
Yeah, for me, I'm totally on board with what you're doing, and I'm really glad you joined us, because for me, it's not about, oh, I want the wine to be in a can, or I want the wine to be in a bottle, or whatever. It's which packaging, which format fits the purpose for the occasion. Like thinking back to the needs occasions, you know, the cans. Someone mentioned picnics. For me, it's, you know, midweek, having a drink on my own, not sharing it. You know, and I do have a Coravan, so I can do bottles as well, but I think there are different occasions, different need states where the cans, the bag in the box, the different formats all fit those needs. And you know, we've been talking about all the more single size things, but even the Magnum. So Natalia is involved with the Rosé Magnum that we put in our packages. You know, those are so much fun. They're so much like if you've got people around, which we can't at the moment, but if you've got people around and you've got 6 people for dinner, you're going to be opening 2 bottles anyway. So open a Magnum and have some fun with it. I mean, Natalia, what are your views on what's happened with Magnum?
So
Yeah, so I'm the different, clearly, in this traditional panel. I make wine in bottles and I use DM corks, and I'm sorry to not be super innovative. But anyway, as a wine producer, and we are an English wine producer, obviously not English, we did experiment with different formats. And I've been hearing your thoughts all this time, and I think the main thing that we get from tonight is wine in cans or wine in bag-in-box or wine in different formats can also be, yes, okay, I agree on that. I would personally buy cans, and I used to drink a lot of bag-in-box when I was living in France, and we also been making wine in Romania, and we've been making bag-in-box in Romania as well. The thing is, as a small producer, why would I ever put my wine in cans and in bag-in-box if not because you have an idea of or like a personal idea, or you like the idea, or you want to be innovative. But to be honest, every time that we do something different to our packaging, it costs money, a lot of money. And when you are a small winery or a medium size or whatever, every time we do something different, it means we need to change a lot of things, logistically, technically, and everything. So we did the magnums, for instance, beautiful magnums. They are made pretty much by hand, literally by hand. They bottle by hand, they wax by hand, they label by hand, they are corked with a very old corking thing. We had to buy particularly boxes for shipping them because they wouldn't fit in our normal standard size shipping boxes. We had to run a print. We only made 500 magnums, so we had to run a print of 500 labels, which is very expensive when you need to print only 500 labels. So everything was super expensive. We cannot charge them too much. I mean, the consumer loves magnums. Rosé magnum is super trendy. Summer, everybody wants a magnum. COVID was super mean with us. Nobody could meet people to drink a magnum of rosé, so that killed us. We were supposed to sell a lot of magnums during Ascot racecourse because it's very close here. It didn't happen, we didn't do it. But anyway, we still not regretting our magnums. We like our magnums anyway. But it really costs much more than 2 bottles of standard rosé. So it's exactly the same, it's like 2 bottles, but for us, it costs much more than just 2 bottles. So will we do it in the future? Well, we bought a lot of empty bottles, so we might do it again next year. Will we do it every year? I don't think so. Yes, they're cool. Yes, they're fine. Innovation is super fun and cool, but when you need to pay salaries and stuff and everything, unless you have a lot of money or unless you are Miguel Torres or Casillero del Diablo, it's not that easy. So that's my personal view. Although I personally buy cans and box and everything. And I do believe that they're the same wine. I did it myself, or my husband did it with his own hands, and the wine was very good. I know that consumers can be persuaded, and I trust consumers will buy more different formats. But as a wine producer, again, unless you're Miguel Torres or somebody, or Jacob's Creek or whatever, we also did half bottles. We ran some half bottles of our Regatta, which is kind of our house white. We did them with a specific target of our wedding customers. They are like little gifts for the wedding viewings. And we thought, okay, let's sell it. Because we have a wine bar, let's put it in the wine bar. I guess people will buy them. Now people just buy the standard bottle, and what they don't drink, they take it home. So why would they ever pay a little more? And the little bottles are more expensive, and the cork costs exactly the same. And the label costs exactly the same. So it was no convenient for us to make half bottles. Will we ever do half bottles again? No way. We won't. We're just finishing that, and we won't. That's the point of view of a medium-sized small producers. James was saying English wine, English grapes are super expensive. You need to make very expensive cans in England to make it. Will it work? Maybe. Will it work better in 50 years? Maybe. In the meantime, I have a winery to run. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a reason why not everybody is doing cans and not everybody is doing bag-in-boxes, or not everybody. And I don't think it's only the consumer. I don't think it's just to say it's because consumer doesn't want them. Maybe, but also there are logistical, technical, and financial things that makes it difficult to every winery to adopt that. I trust more, as somebody was saying before, of some companies being born to make cans, and their product is cans. Make more sense to me than just being a standard winery and making cans and making bag-in-boxes and magnums and thunder bottles and half.
Can I just ask two questions? One is, Ollie, I know that Justin's got his wine club for Domain of the Bee. Are you going to be selling the BIB wines to wine club members? Point one.
Well, not through the Domain of the Bee club, because I think it'd be a little.
Are you planning to make a club for the BIB?
Oh, we do have one. Yeah, it's
so
it's ticking along nicely. We've got a nice waiting list. So, yeah.
And then I'm going to also say, Ben, looking at your packaging, which is the little box the three came in. Do you have a direct sales arm? Do you have people buying it on a regular basis directly from you like that?
Yeah, it was quite strange because of COVID. Obviously, we started looking at just doing trade, but then COVID forced the hand and we had to do D2C straight away. So, yeah, sales through the website, sales through the listing on Novel Wines, which is my retailer as well, and quite a lot of D2C just to get the product moving in the earlier stages. And also because it was our first ever run of wine in can, we needed quick feedback before we started shoving it into buyers in trade as well. And consumers are the best at giving you the honest opinion.
So you and Ollie, can you both say that you're looking at being able to say we can fill so many cans or so many boxes because we know we've got members who we can hopefully rely on to go on taking a certain amount of it?
I mean, that's something that we do have. They make up a really important part of our sales process, and they're the sort of core customers as well. There's a bit of a community there, so it's really helpful for planning, of course. But you know, we don't punish normal customers either. In a way, we've been very keen to balance the two things off, so that actually we're not raising the price artificially, so that we can discount it for club members. If you see what I mean. So can I just chip in actually on what Natalia was saying, because I think it's really interesting from our point of view, in that when we've gone to small and independent producers, that we see a lot of enthusiasm. And I think what Natalia was saying is probably one of the main reasons for that, because it's probably unfair for winemakers, especially the smaller winemakers, to try and not only go through all of the pain of marketing their wine, but also market the format as well. Whereas actually we can market a whole group of small and independent producers, or as well as the format, and in that format. And I think, you know, that's what, going back to what James said earlier on about, you know, this being led by specialists. And I think that's absolutely right. It's people like Rob and James and Simon and us that actually are going to lead this forward. And I think, Robert, you have sold Le Grand Noir by the BIB in other countries, but not UK, because, you know, presumably that's a hell of a job to try and pitch that in the UK as well, because it's not established. Although I actually think, you know, the consumer is quite savvy here, so we're quite lucky to try and bring this new product to them. But,
Ollie, the UK is our worst market. It's actually our best market for fine dining. So we've been in Gordon Ramsay restaurants, and we've been in some very nice, lots of very nice restaurants. But in terms of volume, we do about 2 containers in the year in this country, but by our standards, that's a pretty small one.
Yeah.
And we, to Natalia's point, both disagreeing and agreeing with her, we actually do what our markets want us to do. In other words, if a market wants us to do bag-in-box or wants us to do cans, we will do it. We will propose it but we will not go and fill cans until we know we've got a customer for it. We will not fill the bag in box either until that happens. But for example, there are markets, and the Nordics included in this, for example, that want the bag in box, and we're very happy to. And if anyone in Britain wants to take it in bag in box, we would do it in a heartbeat. But we haven't. We've never found a customer here for it.
I've got a question, Ollie, because I'm still learning about your brand. So, because you've got, I mean, I know Justin works with you in terms of the wines that you put in the box, but you've got the B Pink, which he has in bottles, and you've put that in the box. Do you go to wineries and pretty much offer the service of putting their wine in bag and box, compared to, say, when in Rome, where I think this is like your wine?
We don't offer it as a service so much as try to curate a selection. So the process is really, Justin leads it, but we will travel and have samples sent, and we'll go to fairs, and we'll go to producers. And Justin is fortunately able to taste a lot of wines without sort of tiring himself out. And we whittle down a sort of final selection and get them sent over here, and they have to go through then a tasting with all of the co-founders. And this year actually we had the final tasting with club members and some investors as well. And then we whittle it down further to the final wines that we want to showcase, and then everything from before then, but also all the way through to getting it onto the shelf, is done sort of hand in hand with the winemakers. So it has to be wine that we love and actually want to drink at home before we'll take it. So it's not so much a service as a sort of curation process. And we're really I think it's quite a coincidence that we've got Anne Victoire here tonight, because which I didn't know, but we've got one of her wines, for example, coming on very soon. I hope you don't mind me saying Anne Victoire.
I was going to say it, but it's a different one than the one I put in can. That's the sister of it. That's this one.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
So wines like Anne Victoire's wine, they go through a selection process, I suppose, with similar to many importer merchants or something like that, but we add on to that a packaging process. So that's probably summed up.
Could I chip in briefly, because Victoria Stevens Clarkson, you do half bottles, is that right? It's interesting because in the UK we are famously, infamously, the cheapskate nation of the world. Unfortunately we lost. Well, no, we didn't. We were competing with that title with Germany and Holland, the Netherlands, and it was neck and neck. And then the bastards in Holland stopped racing us. They started buying slightly higher price wines. And the Germans will buy very cheap wines, but they'll also buy more expensive wines. And this country is a really difficult country in which to sell premium wine. And if you don't believe that, go and talk to Laithwaites or Naked Wines, who've got experience of running direct selling in the US and here. The relevance of this to you, Victoria, to me, is that if you look at Japan, which is one of the best places in the world to sell high-priced wine, half bottles work brilliantly, because Japanese consumers have small homes, small fridges, and they don't necessarily have high consumption. And so any shop you go to Tokyo, you will see far more half bottles there than you ever do in London or New York. And to me, there's a cultural thing where I take your point, Natalia, about the cost of a half bottle at a price level. If you start going up the price level, the fact that you've got the cost of the glass and the cork becomes less and less relevant if you're talking about a wine that's got a £15 price point or whatever. Now, the wine may not last as long in the half bottle, but people aren't keeping wine that long anyway, so that's not that relevant. So I'm interested to know where you come in on this, Victoria, in terms of your half bottles. You're muted. Hold on.
Yeah, there we go. Hi, good evening. Yes, I think there's probably less sensitivity actually than people realise. And maybe for two reasons. Firstly, I think if you're shopping in the supermarket and you're not buying wine, but you're buying other items, whether it's rice, whether it's flour, whether it's milk, or whatever it is, if you buy something in a smaller quantity, you always pay a little bit more. And I think most people do realise that, whoever it is. So I don't think people are quite as sensitive to that premium on half bottles as some people think, maybe. And particularly because if it means they can try something new, then it's actually cheaper. It doesn't matter that it's not half the price, but it's just cheaper. It's a cheaper way of tasting it. And that doesn't matter what wine it is, really. I think it's just a more accessible way to taste something, because again, it might be, they're usually sort of between 60 and 70% of the full bottle, sometimes a little bit more, but it's still a more affordable way of trying something. And that doesn't matter if it's in the supermarket or it's, it's a Barolo at the other end. I think it's just a slightly easier way to taste, because it certainly, yeah.
What sort of wine, how many wines and what sort of wines are you doing?
Well, I had close to 100 halves on my list, and I have some more on the way. But the last few months have been a little mad, like for everyone in retail. So I've now got sort of 80, 85 with another 25, I think, almost ready to go onto the list. They start at £7.50 a half. So, and obviously the general UK retail average is less than £6 for a full bottle.
Yeah.
So I'm realistic about the fact that this is quite a step up. So £7.50 a half upwards, and they go up to I think I've got £7.50. I've got a lovely Côte de Rhône from Delas. It's got a nice nice bit of Syrah in there. And then a lovely Muscadet, and then it goes up to, I think it's around £70 for a Grand Cru from a Corton Grand Cru from Faverley. So it's a real range.
Can I ask another thing, which is that to me the ideal size is not 37.5 centilitres, it's actually 50 centilitres.
Yeah.
Half litre is a really nice size for wine.
Yeah.
To me, 75 is more than I often necessarily need. You get through the bottle, but you don't necessarily need that much. 50 would be perfect. Are you doing any 50 CLs?
I'm not at the moment, and quite a few people have mentioned that to me. I think the relative difference, if you're trying to make a change and you're trying to drink less wine, the relative difference between 75 CL and 50 CL is probably not enough if you're looking to really make a change.
And you've got the duty, you've got the extra duty between 37.5 and 50, which makes a difference as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if you're really looking to make a change, it's probably not enough. But having said that, I've met plenty of people who've said that 50 is the right for them, I think. But back to you've reminded me actually of I think it was Soma's point, and there was a comment by Nathan in the chat box that I think it is about occasion. So it's possibly less about the exact amount and more about just giving people a choice to drink less, or to drink less during the week, or to mix wines across a meal. It's quite popular. A lot of people, they don't want to open 2 bottles. They'll know they'll waste. It's about cutting down on waste as well. They know that they'll waste a decent amount of wine if they open 2 bottles. But if you open 2 halves, you can have a white with one course and a red with another, and again cut down on waste. I think the occasion comment is really, really important. I think that was Soma earlier.
Have you had people just during the pandemic reach out to you who want to do online corporate tastings or virtual has that become quite a big part of your demographic now? Yeah,
definitely. In fact, I was my 6 o'clock this evening was an online tasting, Amelia, and they've been very popular. I think I've done about 30 to 35 myself, but the tasting packs I've probably sent out another, I don't know. I mean, it's not £67 Mal's done amazingly at this, so I'm definitely not sort of up in that level. But certainly, I've probably sent out about 400 to 500 to corporate clients.
Great.
Yeah.
Bear in mind, you're sending half bottles. They're sending tons.
Yeah, I'm sending half bottles. I'm sending either 3 or 4 half bottles. Yeah. Yeah, and it works well. I mean, 4 half bottles in one session is still a lot of wine if it's one person. So they usually, I say they're good for that night, the following night, and the night after that.
Yeah, but we've been doing 3 bottles, and then tonight we've got a few people who have opened a can, a bag-in-box, and a magnum. So. But yeah,
I think
responsibly.
Soma, you were singing the praises earlier on of Coravin, and I'm a huge fan of Coravin, and we did an interview with Greg Lambrecht the other evening. He's one of my heroes, but they're not cheap. You really, so basically, it makes sense to use Coravin on a decent Burgundy or a Napa Cabernet or whatever it is, but you start using Coravin on a lower price wine, and you're going to spend more money on the gas than you are actually on the wine if you're not careful. So there's a logic, whether it's in half bottles or cans or bag-in-box or whatever. All of those options definitely have a logic that the Coravin doesn't supersede, if you like.
And something like cans also makes the wine more accessible, so you can try it without investing in it. And I think what Ollie's done has been really clever. I mean, I was gutted I missed it because I've been too busy doing my own webinars. I've missed everyone else's. But your little pouches that you did, like, I mean, I think of them as like Ella's Kitchen pouches. And you made samples. Now, for someone to be able to buy a sample pack, try the wines and go, oh, I like this white and this red, I'll buy a box in each. I think that's brilliant.
So again, if I could just chip in and say, I may have started all this by saying the wine industry is crap. Can I say that 67 Pall Mall, which was started by a banker, managed to create a whole structure within 2 weeks of sourcing the little bottles, sourcing the argon, testing them, how you actually spark the bottles, put the wine in, put the things, get the boxes round, work out how much it would cost to post. And he got that up, and I think they've posted 12,000, whatever it is, a ludicrous number of packs. They did that from a standing start. And the wine industry until now is still, when I was fortunately, I don't do it now, but as a wine writer, I'm still getting these boxes and boxes of 75 CL samples in environmentally unfriendly polystyrene packaging on the basis, and for which they've spent God knows how much postage to get it to me, for me to taste that much. And so to me, the 100 ml samples that you're doing, that you and Justin are doing, Ollie, so the industry, and just in terms of the environment, the wine industry's got to wake up and smell whatever grape or coffee or whatever it is, and say we've got to actually start to react, not go on doing the thing we've done because our fathers did it and our grandfathers did it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the 100 ml size was we were worried it was too much, but we did 100 ml so that 2 people could share, and it worked out really well. And we wanted people to be able to taste 6 wines actually, which is a bit of a speed tasting, and we wanted to keep it to an hour, maybe go over if people wanted to hang around for questions. But unfortunately, we've had to send boxes out as samples because, for something like tonight, we want people to get the look and feel of them. But actually, because we've run out of our pouches because we've been sending them out to customers. But it's gone down really well, and we've had people start to show interest in doing it for other people and things. And I think it's a slightly different take because it's small. There is a longevity issue, and actually the pouch doesn't necessarily help. But if you're sending them to be tried, that week, it's not an issue at all. And if you're careful with the processes, then it is fairly robust. So it's something we're investing further in terms of our own time, and we'll be holding more of those sessions. Sure.
Where are you filling those pouches?
It's all pretty sort of cottage industry. So we do it ourselves, and then we take them back out into the warehouse for postage and things like that. So
it is under argon, the same principle.
It is not under argon actually this first time. But to be honest, if you're posting it that day for tasting the following day, and you cap it off with absolutely no air content, then it's pretty robust. And we trialed it. We didn't rush into it because we sent it out to consumers, and we did a couple of tests, and the final one being a sort of a lengthier test with Justin, And yeah, it worked out really well. So the next stage is argon, to try and give it a little bit more time so that it's not exposed to the oxygen during the filling process. I suspect actually it wasn't necessarily a bad thing, because the wine comes out, and if it's just had a glance of air on the way into a pouch, and then is being tasted 1 or 2 days later, I suspect it may have had some very slight beneficial effects, but we certainly didn't have any issues with it.
Well, Francesca, I think, is saying that it arrived immaculately in perfect condition. Probably talking about yours. So I think she maybe Natalia's responded. So maybe Natalia, I don't know whose it was. Francesca.
I think Francesca and Natalia are having a little romance over the birthday magnet. Talking of filling bottles, Robert, yes, I do think 67 Pall Mall, they've smashed it, and I can't believe how many webinars they're doing. It's absolutely amazing. But talking of filling bottles, Rob, I think it's your turn to come in here on this with what you're doing with Waitrose, with your, I mean, we've called this webinar Wines Unpacked, but there you're actually I think it's in 4 stores, I think you said, where you can go and fill up your own bottles. Now, I was going to go and visit one, and then lockdown happened, so I haven't. But tell us about what's happening there, because that seems to be almost like back to the roots of going to the winery and filling up your own bottle.
That's exactly what it is, right? And we obviously that was looming large in our plans for this year, and whilst something happened, yeah. So, well, it's been really interesting what's the effects on our business of Waitrose, because I think, for our boxes, it's been fabulous. Because we're the top priced wine box in the store, I think what happened in the peak panic buying was that everybody ran in, bought all the cheap box wine, and then kind of went, oh shit, there's nothing left, and then bought ours because what was left and actually liked it. So that's been really, really helpful for our sales, right? But on the other hand, Unpacked, it started very, very well. We started in Poppy Road store in Oxford. They rolled out to 3 more. We're the only wine supplier to it, and we loved it. We sort of spent, I spent many Saturdays in Waitrose, Cheltenham, working with the guys there, and they had huge plans actually to roll this out. But it's sort of on life support, to be honest, because of COVID. Like the sales are, there's a lot of, the jury's out on how refill will respond to the pandemic, basically, because there's whilst on the one hand, Starbucks, for example, stopped doing refillable, coffee cups, didn't they? Because they didn't want their staff to handle something else brought in. Whereas in reality, actually handling the correct way, that you're not really increasing the risk to people. But there's a lot of, it's very, very early days. What's going to happen there? And I think certainly from a packaging perspective, COVID is a complete catastrophe, isn't it? For PPE and things like that. But the Unpacked thing was, it is and was a very exciting project, and we really hope that they, when this situation, who knows what happens to it, but we hope that they continue to roll it out. I mean, Waitrose has got has the stated aim to be the UK's most sustainable retailer, and that's certainly part of it. We hope that they continue to roll it out.
And then, I mean, there are other things that have happened this week with that. That all the news about the paper bottle. But Robert, you already kind of said that's already been done. There must be other stuff that's happening. It
was done in 2000, and again, the crapness of our industry. Basically, I'm sorry, but it's not through the mists of time. We are in 2020, and in 2013, which is 7 years ago. I know it seems like a long time ago. I know the Olympics was 2012. I know Britain was a different and much nicer country then, but it's not that long ago. And there was something called Green Bottle, and my business partner, Kevin Shaw of Stranger and Stranger, took the project to Safeways and created a packaging project called Paperboy. And it got a lot of coverage, and Green Bottle got coverage in this country, and it was in all the same publications that are talking about the new product today. And it is the same concept, except that the company that did Green Bottle went bust. Now, there are 2 points about this, and this is what kind of annoys me about the way that it was covered. And it's back to the sort of questions I was asking you, Rob. It's a paper bottle with a plastic liner. And paper goes to one bit of recycling and plastic goes somewhere else. And what is the plastic? Is that actually a thin film recycled plastic? Is it not? And so on. And then this isn't being addressed. So everyone's focusing on this nice paper bottle, but they're not actually focusing on the niceties of how it's going to be recycled. But it is light. It is an innovative product, and I think it's the sort of thing we should be thinking about more, but we should be asking more questions. The problem with the initial one back in the States in 2013 was they had oxidation problems. So it certainly wasn't, and Safeways had quite significant volumes of Paperboy, and back to your 1 in 9 figure that I think you, Simon, talked about in terms of problems with the Sauvignon Blanc in the cans. I think they were getting, I don't know what the numbers were, but they were getting definite quality control problems on the paper bottles. So I hope that they've resolved that with the TruePack version we're seeing today. But again, it is an innovation and we want to see these things, but it doesn't have to be 75 centiliter. Again, it's the same size. It's still following the wine bottle model. Why does it have to be that? Because apart from anything else, the moment you have a round thing, this does affect cans as well, but there are other reasons, I guess. The moment you have a round thing, you are taking up more space in a box than you need to. So we had this thing called California Square that Kevin Shaw also was behind, which was square bottles. And square bottles, as you know from your cooking oil, make more sense because you get more bottles into a box. Bottles do not have to be round. Your bag-in-box isn't round. It's a cube.
I'd say something potentially incendiary here, which was it was some feedback when we were talking about the Unpacked project that Waitrose had a fairly high-level roundtable meeting with people from Greenpeace, Plastic Planet. We turned up and Ecover were in the room, and we were discussing potential negative PR that was going to come from essentially using large bag-in boxes for an unpacked project, because that's how unpacked works. We're doing 10-litre boxes there. So there's still this plastic question which you were alluding to earlier. One of the take-home messages actually which sort of came up in the room was the planet's going to boil before it drowns in plastic. So I appreciate that there is a need to find a way of recycling plastic. However, the amount of energy that's required for format should also be something which not only we're all talking about, but should also be something which almost creates a hierarchy as well in terms of things that we should be moving forward and priorities which we should be innovating for. I think the need to, as I said before, put plastic into the ecosystem and find better technologies to recycle virgin grade food level plastics is a conversation that we should all be aware about, simply because of the melting point of plastic versus metal versus glass. There's a huge energy consumption conversation which needs to be had alongside any innovation conversation as well.
I think that's a very fair point, but I also think that back to your filling of bottles, I mean, I think refilling glass bottles, and again, in terms of innovation, and I'm now feeling very, very, very old because I was living in Burgundy in the late 1970s, which is a prehistoric time. And, you know, nobody in the local Bone supermarket, when I went there, they weren't drinking Burgundy. They couldn't afford Burgundy. They couldn't afford Aligote. Most of them. They were drinking liter bottles with stars, with 5 stars around the top. You can still buy these bottles on eBay. You can still find them. And they had plastic stoppers. They didn't have plastic corks. They were literally little bits of plastic set on the top. And you bought that wine by the liter and you bought that there was a 9%, 10%, 11% alcohol. And you bought it on the basis of the alcohol level. You had no idea where it came from. It might have been North African, could have been, doesn't matter what it was. But I can tell you that the 10% was less disgusting than the 9%, and the 11% was almost drinkable. But you paid a deposit on the bottle, in the same as we used to spend on Coca-Cola bottles, and they were heavyweight glass, and that's an entirely logical thing. All cheap wine, as far as I'm concerned, all cheap wine should be in some form of environmentally friendly product, and that is not a recyclable bottle, it's a refillable bottle or a can.
Yeah, I agree.
And you know, and again, the Nordics do that they're not using those liter bottles, but there's a lot of reuse of bottles, but we haven't got that discipline.
I mean,
I asked Natalia about that a little while ago. I said, could I just bring my bottles back and you refill them? But there's like a whole cleaning process, sterilizing process. So again, it's more equipment, more processes in the winery to be able to do that, I guess.
Yeah, in Italy, it's very common actually, and I think in France they do it as well. In France, you just bring your own 5 liters PET to the winery, and you just fill it up. And that's very common, and that's the way we buy wine back there in Puglia. And I thought it was something super common all over the world. And then when our foreign customers used to come and say, "Oh, why do you have like a petrol station?" Because it actually looks like a petrol station. I don't know if you ever seen one of those. But every winery in Italy, in the south of Italy at least, has that. Just bring your 5 liters PET, fill it up and bring it home. But it wouldn't work with the bottles. I mean, sterilizing and clean up and a glass bottle again. I mean, it's doable. In Argentina, our beers, there are some cans, but we mainly buy beers by 1 liter glass bottle. It's a liter bottle. And the only way to buy one of those in the supermarket is if you bring your empty bottle. So that's beer market in Argentina, and it's only that. Cans sometimes, but not very much. It's mainly 1 liter bottle, and that's how I grew up. Why don't we do it in the wine industry? I don't know. I guess it's a much more fragmented industry, so it's all little vineyards and little wineries that will need to be prepared to do that. Whereas beer, it's in my city in Argentina, in Santa Fe, there's a huge brewery that makes beer for Heineken and beer for Budweiser and a lot of brands. So it's a huge industry. So they all receive all the bottles from all over the province, and they have these cleaning machines and everything. It's different in beer. It's not fragmented. There's a few brands. In wine, you can expect little wineries or even medium-sized wineries to buy all the equipment to sterilize their own bottles.
But we could end up, just as we're doing with cans, we can have a mobile, we will have small businesses that do contract work. But you've reminded me of when I first went to Argentina and Chile, which was that certainly in Chile, and I think it was true in Argentina as well, but cheap wine was in Tetra Pak.
Yeah. And
so you would actually get 1 liter of Tetra Pak wine. And Tesco's has done it in the UK in the past and so on. And why not? It's a very logical way to sell cheap wine. You know, it's a Tetra Pak unfortunately isn't as recycled as it should be in the UK, but it is in many places. But that is light, they're square, they pack easily, and why not do it? And you know, I can see, Rob, you're talking about, have you just suddenly said, right, you're going to go off and try and do a Tetra version? I just think that we should all be thinking outside the boxes that we're stuck in.
Didn't sorry to interrupt, but didn't you may know this, Robert, but didn't someone try Tetra Pak? Was it Boisset who tried Tetra Pak in the UK? I can't remember.
He tried it. He did French Rabbit, I think, at one point. He also, but we haven't mentioned, since we're trying to cover all of the ground before we finish, I did Greener Planet in PET bottles before. There was a moment, some of you may be old enough to remember this, where we were all told to buy diesel cars because diesel was better than petrol for the environment. And then suddenly they decided it wasn't. Well, PET had a moment where people looked at the weight and the recyclability of PET and it was better than glass, and it's better than everything. And Boisset and our Greener Planet were two of the people who tried to do it. And no sooner had we started than people said, it's not being recycled, it doesn't work. But PET, if it is recycled, is a brilliant way to package wine. Back to your point in terms of your bags, it doesn't take much heat to make a PET bottle. It doesn't take much more heat to recycle.
Well, I think we're going to have to wrap up soon because we've gone way over time. Apologies, I haven't managed to get back to Natalia to do tasting notes, or Rob to do.
Right, Natalia did it in the chat, I think.
To do the Montepulciano di Abruzzo, I can message that to you later. But yeah, Robert, would you mind just kind of wrapping up? And I know you've always got interesting, crazy thoughts of where we should go, but where do we go from here? What do you see is going to happen, or could happen, or should happen?
I think we've got the one thing I'm seeing, what I love about the group of people here, and everyone's got their own different stories. And Natalia, your stories with your customers are possibly very different to, let's say, James's with what he's doing. But we've got a big market. The overlap between wine and beer and spirits and so on it's a beverage market. And Kristen, you and Amelia in California, where wine is competing with cannabis. And people have said to me, oh no, it's different. One of these things you smoke. Well, you don't take cannabis necessarily. You don't have to smoke it these days. It's what's probably one of the most old-fashioned ways of actually ingesting. But people, it's what we now call share of buzz. Coca-Cola had the expression share of throat. Coca-Cola have fruit juice, they have water, they have Coke and all sorts of things. And they say, all we want is that when you're drinking a non-alcoholic beverage, we want it to come from Coke in Atlanta. And we now have share of throat in terms of other liquids. So in the States, again, I don't know how many people watching this or whatever have actually tasted a bourbon barrel wine. Most of the people in the UK, whoever interact with me online, including Jamie Good and a few other people, get really disgusted at the idea of bourbon barrel wine. And they're right, because if you're a wine lover, you probably won't enjoy bourbon barrel wine. But if you're a bourbon lover, it's terrific. So why shouldn't bourbon lovers actually have something they enjoy drinking? And by the same token, your cocktail, James, is opening up, it's moving that direction. So I think, the product should be wider, and we should be ready to embrace far more latitude of product. And B, the packaging should be broader. And what we've got to do as producers of wine, as distributors of wine, is find the two things that are crucial. Because I spent most of my working time until 15 years ago, it seems 15's flown past, but I was a wine critic and I was obsessed with the liquid in the bottle. You, Kristen, were a sommelier. You were obsessed with the stuff in the bottle when you were serving it in a restaurant. We all are. And then one day when I stopped doing that, and I suddenly got involved with the producers and the market and started talking to consumers, I realized that actually the distribution and communication are every bit as important as the product. The best product in the world, if nobody knows about it, no one's going to buy it. And if they can't get it, they're not going to buy it either. And so I think direct to consumer is going to be growing. And I'm seeing that from what you're talking about, Ollie, what you've talked about also, Ben, and I can see that growing. And it's what you're doing in this Soma, Amelia. That's part of what this whole project is about, is people tuning in and discovering Natalia's wine in a way they wouldn't have done otherwise, and going back to buy more for Natalia. So far more direct selling, far more communication to consumers as to why they should actually trust anybody to buy what they're buying and then to go on buying. And Kristen, I'm sorry, I haven't heard as much from you as I'd like. I'd like to follow more of what you're doing. But I think the States, everybody in the UK wine industry should spend more time looking at what's happening in the US. At the moment, we don't understand Trump. We don't understand an awful lot of things that are happening in the US. and some of us shut our minds to it, but we shouldn't, because there's more innovation happening in wine on the other side of the Atlantic than there is anywhere else at the moment, and some of it won't work here. But some of the bag-in-box stuff there has been brilliant. The canning stuff is brilliant, and some of the other innovations we should go on looking. So I think this is just the beginning of an ongoing story. I haven't got any of the answers, but I just love the fact, just before I forget to finish this, Anne Victoire wanting to launch a canned wine project is doing it on crowdfunder. Well, on Mimosa, the French crowdfunding. You couldn't have done that 5 years ago. She's going to find out how many people are going to chip in 20 euros for a 3-pack or whatever. And if not enough people do it, she won't do it. She won't make the thing. And if enough people do it, she's actually created something. And I just think that is the future. It is actually creating those fan bases that I think everybody here in their different way is doing. And yes, if you can get your wine in Waitrose, Rob, terrific. But if you can do the other stuff as well, double terrific.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It's been a really big panel, so we have gone way over, but I think it's been fascinating. And thank you to all the attendees for coming along as well and participating. Sorry I didn't get to read all of your comments. Join us next week if you want to. We are going to Germany, and you know it's going to be
physically or
no, unfortunately not. No, I'm half German, so I kind of, you know, I wanted to do a German one, and we're looking at Oliver Zeta wines, doing a tasting of 3 Oliver Zeta wines, and then we've also got Anne Kriebel and Jan Matthias Klein coming on to kind of talk about the new world of German wine, because people are a bit scared of German wine, so let's talk about it. All right.
Anyway.
Thank you.
Go safe, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night.